there, this is Miriam Schulman, founder of The Inspiration Place, and welcome back to video number 3 of my free 4-part video series on painting the portrait in watercolor. So if you're just tuning in video number 1,
I showed you how anyone can learn how to paint portraits. I shared with you dozens of my watercolor commissions as well as art done by my students. In video number 2, we talked about the taboo technique.
I gave away the portrait painter's dirty secret for drawing portraits.
Make sure you watch videos 1 and video number 2. They're only about 20 minutes each. You're going to be so glad that you did.
But you're going to really want to tune in for these juicy tips to be able to capture a likeness and also to take better photographs. And then in video number 3, which is this video,
we'll be talking about why it's a huge advantage to use watercolor when you are painting portraits.
I'm going to be sharing with you my complete watercolor supply list. So if you want to get your hands on the complete supply list, including a few pigments that I only use for portraits, stay tuned.
Today I'm going to build upon what we've already discussed in the first 2 videos by really fleshing out the complete blueprint to learn how to paint portraits. So remember in video 1, I told you how anyone can do it. In video 2, I talked about posing, photographing, and projecting. By the end of this video, you're going to have so much more clarity about watercolor painting, and you'll start to see how everything fits together. We're also going to be revealing the complete watercolor supply list, and once you get your hands on that, you'll never have to wonder which watercolor paints you need again. This will help you break free of frustration, and it's key in helping you learn this process. We've got so much to cover today, so make sure you've got your pen and paper ready so you can take notes and follow along. Today, I want to tackle the questions and concerns that you have been asking me. So I'm going to get to that first. I'm also going to be sharing why it's a huge advantage to be using watercolor when you want to paint portraits, especially if you're using my 5P framework. If you are just tuning in, the 5P framework, once again, is pose, photograph, project, paint, and polish. And if you want to learn more about posing and photographing and projecting, make sure you watch videos 1 and 2. And then I'm going to share with you the paintings of people who have already taken watercolor portraits, since they're so inspiring, and most importantly, they demonstrate what's possible for you when you let go of your fears. And finally, I'm going to be sharing with you my complete watercolor supply list for portraits. So let's dive in right now. We're going to address some of the questions that you might have already. Let's start with one I'm seeing all over the comment page, and that is, what kind of camera do I need? All right, so here's my response to that. And don't worry, you do not have to learn about f-stops or anything like that. In fact, you can use a simple point and shoot camera. Heck, you know what? You can even use your iPhone, because now they sell these lenses that you can clip on. So that's what's most important, is that you get a proper lens for it. So in the supply list that I'm going to be providing with you, I have listed a lens that is easy peasy to snap on your phone or your iPad so you can take better pictures. The main thing is that you learn how to set up your camera or your phone, whichever it is that you're using, so that you're using it at the highest resolution. And you can go into the store wherever you purchase that phone, and they can show you how to do that for free. Many of you were asking me what kind of projector I use and how much it costs. I actually don't use the projector method anymore for tracing my photographs. There's a lot of problems with it, so don't go out and buy yourself a fancy projector. There is actually a much easier way to trace your photographs, and we will definitely be covering that if you're interested in the full watercolor portraits class. But basically, don't go out and buy a projector unless you're trying to figure this out on your own. Then go ahead. But that is not the way I do it anymore, and that's not the way I teach how to trace. Next, I was getting a lot of questions about what else you're going to learn in the full class that hasn't been covered in the free series, because I did give a lot of free information in video number 2. In video number 2, I shared with you a few posing tips and tricks, such as the Mona Lisa smile and not to line up the kits. Now, if you join me for the online class, Watercolor Portrait Academy, I'll walk you through all 14 of my favorite tips for posing kids so that you can tell a story with your portraits and make a beautiful composition. And those 14 tips are just in the posing lesson. I have a complete another full video lesson for you just in lighting. So even if you never thought to pick up a paintbrush to paint a portrait, you're going to come away with taking more beautiful photographs of your children, your grandchildren, and your loved ones. The other question I have been getting a lot of is if you can take this class if you have never painted in watercolor before. Now, I have to say that if you have never taken a watercolor class or you've never taken a watercolor class with me, then I highly recommend you take my starter course, Watercolor Secrets. In Watercolor Secrets, I not only walk you through how to use all the supplies the right way and why I use what I do, but I will get you started with 3 painting projects that were chosen specifically so that you can learn the proper shading and color mixing techniques that will put you on your way for portraits. So you will learn through painting eggs and pears and tulips the exact skills you need to learn blending and shading for skin tones. I thought that was pretty sneaky of me, right? It's kind of like in the Karate Kid with the wax on and wax off to teach him the Karate Kid skills. So if you've already taken that class, isn't that great to know you already have a leg up? And in a few days, when I open registration for watercolor portraits, I will be offering a savings for signing up for both classes at the same time. Another question I get asked all the time is, am I ready yet? And here's the thing. You are never going to feel ready. You're just going to have to dive in and do it anyway. I remember years ago when I first started out thinking the same things that probably you do. I thought because I didn't have an MFA, because I didn't have rich parents or a fancy studio in Brooklyn, or I didn't go to art school and I wasn't with a gallery, I thought all these things were reasons that I couldn't make it as an artist and I couldn't do it. And maybe you're not even ready to call yourself an artist, but if you feel you're not ready to paint, that is just fear talking and fear holding you back. Don't let fear get in the way of doing something you in your heart of hearts know that you really want to do. So just tell fear to take a hike and choose your love over fear. So just remember this, if you're always looking for confirmation that you're not good enough, you'll find it. So don't look for it anymore. Okay, so now before I share more paintings done by my students, and before I even get into the watercolor supply list, we really have to address why I'm suggesting that you paint in watercolors. I mean, why not acrylic or oils? So let's talk about that. Now, I love doing portraits in watercolors, and here's why. First of all, they're non-toxic and they're easy to clean up. So if you have a busy life, working in watercolor is going to save you time and aggravation on both setup and cleanup. This also means that you don't need to have a fancy ventilated studio space. You can paint right at your kitchen table or really anywhere in your home. Also, because watercolor is less formal than oils or even acrylics, when you paint children and pets, it allows you to show their playfulness, personality, and allows their essence to shine through. And finally, when you paint with watercolors, it allows you to use the special shortcut that I teach that makes the whole process that much easier. So remember I talked about the 5 P's. When you project, which you learned in video number 2 is really just the whole tracing method. When you're working with watercolors, it allows you to see your pencil lines. So it makes it so much easier to capture a likeness. I promised I would show you artwork for my students, and I can't wait to dive into that right now. In the portraits class, I'm giving you step-by-step demonstration for painting my daughter Talia, and my students are given the chance to work from the same photo to create their portrait. But what I thought would be most inspiring, instead of just showing you the pictures of their artwork, I wanted you to hear directly from a few of my students.
My name is Barbara White. I really hadn't had a lot of experience in watercolor. When I saw Miriam was offering a class in watercolor, I said, wow, that's something I want to do. Right. And then I painted my first watercolor picture then. I was worried that, I'd spend this money, but I wouldn't either enjoy it, or I was also kind of afraid of actually painting portraits, because if you paint something, you expect it to look like what you're painting. And I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I found that I really kind of liked painting with watercolor. With Miriam's tips of how to get the picture onto the paper, first of all, it wasn't as scary as I expected it to be. And then when I did try doing portraits, I loved the tips that she had given along the way. Mix the skin colors, put the underpainting on, things that I had never learned before. I have had fun watching have fun. She makes it look like anybody can do it, and if you make a little mistake, it's not the end of the world. And I have the confidence to actually paint them. They've always been in my head before, and they've never actually come out on paper. This is something new and different for me. I have actually sold a couple of pieces, and that's an inspiration for me.
I've always liked to draw people. I never actually painted one, though, because I really didn't know how to start, really, and what kind of paint to use or anything. I just didn't know. I felt like I could only go so far. I would reach a point where this is where I don't know where to go from here. You don't make people feel like they can't do it. You're very encouraging. But I still learned a lot, and I can do things that I couldn't do before, like with the colors. I didn't know what colors to use for the face. For me, I just learned a lot, and the techniques and the materials to use are really helpful. I didn't know just how you teach. For me, I feel very comfortable with it. You're down to earth. You don't criticize. It's just do your very best. It's okay. I just didn't feel like intimidated at all. Like, I can do this. I'll at least try, and whatever I do, it's going to be okay because I tried. I was just always drawing freehand, and then you shared that technique about how to actually use a photo of the person and transfer it and so forth. And so you've got your measurements are correct, where all the facial features go and everything. I didn't know people did that. I have a lot of grandchildren, so I like to do them. I've done a few of those, and then my goal, I guess, was probably to do each one of them. I still learn. I mean, it just shows that we can always be learning. We should always be learning, and the way you explain things, it's not intimidating at all, and you don't feel like, oh, I can't do that.
I've always wanted to try watercolors, and I wanted to try portraits because I wanted to try my grandchildren, and actually being able to get a face that looked like a face. So watercolors was the challenge, and portraits was the challenge. I just kept trying it until I got something that I thought was okay. And I'll be doing some more too. I think I can do it. The one of your daughter, and she really turned out pretty good. And this one is a grandchild. My son came and saw the stuff that I had done, and he saw I had done the flute, the hands with the flute, and one grandchild plays the flute, so he took that. And then the one with all the dogs that I did, the 3 dogs on one like yours, and he took that, and so those are basically the ones that have disappeared. Well, I mean, they look at that and they can't believe that I did that. And so I said, well, it's Marion Schulman. It's her class.
Pretty inspiring, right? Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about the Watercolor Portrait Academy, and I would love to see you in there. And I will be talking to you more about the program and what's included and how you can enroll in the next video. But right now, I want to share with you more of my free training. So as I promised, here is the complete list of all the watercolor supplies you will need.
For the watercolor portraits, you're going to use a lot of the same colors you do in the other classes, but there are going to be some different ones that I tend to use for painting watercolors. The raw umber, you don't always end up using this color for every single portrait, but certainly if you're painting anybody who is not Caucasian, I always use yellow ochre, raw sienna in my portraits for getting subtleties. The yellow I do use for Caucasian skin, cadmium yellow. If I'm painting blonde hair, I use a lemon yellow. So it's a little different, but it does make a difference. I also will use a little bit of quinacridone gold from time to time, even in my portrait work. And I use tons of burnt sienna, tons of it. Definitely going to use cadmium red for portraits. And I just squeezed some fresh rose madder. That is usually what I use for my pink, but there isn't much difference between these pinks. So if you don't have this one, when you use another one, it's not going to make much of a difference in your painting. It'll still come out great. Here's a color that I do use for portraits that you haven't seen me use, I don't think, in anything else, and that's Scarlet Lake. It's a pink, much brighter than this pink. It's very transparent, very bright, and it's a little bit staining, but I love it. It's beautiful. I do tend to use a lot of brown madder when I'm doing portraits. It's really great for layering. Brown madder and the Scarlet Lake are two colors that even if you've taken my classes before, you may not have them, and I do recommend that you pick them up. Indian red, you could mix it yourself, kind of, with the cadmium red and cobalt blue, but it's very convenient to have. It's nice to get that rich dark, and sometimes I'll use it like in the corners of the mouth, so I like it. Occasionally I will use sap green in hair or on skin when I'm doing portraits. Definitely need the cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue. Now the one specialty color that you may want to get is In the Throne blue, and I only use that for doing blue jeans. But it really does make a great blue jean color. So if that's something that you want to do, this is the perfect color for it. Some of the other colors are just, you may or may not need them for a portrait, but for the backgrounds, cobalt turquoise, phthalo green mixes beautifully in backgrounds. The ultramarine blue, I definitely use it in brown hair, so you're going to need that for sure. And that's like a review of the colors you need for painting portraits. And what's really great about watercolor, if you haven't used it before, even though a little tube is very expensive, it goes a long way, because once you squeeze it out and it dries up, you just take your little spray bottle and you can spray, and the paints are good to go again. So it's not like acrylic where you squeeze it out and it dries up and basically it's gone.
Now, I promised you a download of my complete watercolor supply list for portraits. So in order to get that, here's what you have to do. Go to schulmanart.com/WP supplies. Once you're there, click the button, enter your name and email, and I'll send it directly to your inbox. That way it's yours to print, it's yours to keep forever. And if that doesn't work for you, I will be emailing you the list tomorrow anyway. So don't worry about it if it doesn't quite work. Let's do a quick recap of everything we learned today and everything that we've learned in this video series. So to paint portraits, I've developed the 5P framework. You have to pose your subjects, photograph your subjects, project them so you can trace them, paint them in watercolors, and then add the finishing touches, which I call polishing. And I hope that makes you feel better, that you can see that there is a process and a method for everything to fit together. So regardless of where you are in your journey, there is a place for you to get started. Now that I've got those wheels turning, I want to hear from you. I know you've picked up so many ideas from these videos, and now it's time for you to get started. So let me know in the comments what your first step is going to be. Now, I have a little announcement for you. If you wait until the next video, how it can be easier and faster, whether you're a beginning art student, because this lays out the exact plan on how to paint portraits, or you've already been painting already, but now you really want to try your hand at painting portraits. I have been hearing from a number of people who's been asking me questions about Watercolor Portrait Academy, and I'd love to have you join us. So in the next video, we'll be talking more about that program and how you can join. However, I do have another masterclass. So depending on when you're listening to this video, video number 3, on September 16th, I will be going live in a masterclass. And during that masterclass, I'm even going to be offering a video demonstration. We'll be reviewing a lot of the things I've shared in this video series, plus the demo, plus you'll be able to join me live. And people who join the class at the end of that masterclass will be eligible for a special webinar only bonus. Okay, so here is how you sign up for the live masterclass. You can click right below this video on that button and you can sign up that way. If you don't see the button because you're on a phone or whatever, no worries. Just go to schulmanart.com/masterclass. Again, enter your name and email. That will reserve your spot in the class. I will be showing up live, so you'll be able to ask me questions, and I will be sharing with you a live watercolor video demo. So instruction, you're not going to want to miss it. But for now, what I want to leave you with is this. Just by taking part in the Passion Portrait Workshop, you're already closer to knowing how to paint portraits. Think about what you learned in video 1 and also in video number 2. Video 2 alone, that training showed you how you can cheat legally to create portraits you can be proud of. And this video showed you exactly what supplies you need. Isn't it amazing how simple this can be once you know the steps? This is huge, and knowing this will continue to pay off from now and into the future. And today you got my complete watercolor supply list, so you can start art supply shopping. And for those DIYers, you can even start doing this yourself. So isn't it easier knowing every step along the way? In just a short amount of time, you've learned so much about how to paint portraits. And in the next video, I'll share the next step on your journey. I'm so excited about what's in store for you. I'll see you either in the masterclass on September 16th or in the next video. I hope to see you there because I'd love to talk to you live. Thanks again for joining me here today.